Welcome to the Wizard Shop, and today we're going to take a look at this 2014 Mercedes-Benz GL63 AMG. Well, now I got all the letters. Let's take a look at this thing. Oh, and it's also bi-turbo. This is actually owned by a good friend, Rob, who's also a good friend of Hoovie from Hoovie's Garage. And there's a big story that goes along with this car that when Rob bought it, Hoovie said, "Please don't buy it, Rob. You will go bankrupt. It will literally drain your bank." And it's a very bad buy. And here it is today. He bought it. We're going to take a look around it. It's actually here for some service. We're getting some things fixed. Actually, they're already done. We'll show you some of the reasons why some of these can droop with the air suspension, and also we'll take a look at some of the common failures with these. So let's go ahead and hop under the hood and see what we got going on under there. Like mentioned, this is the bi-turbo 5.5 liter, and it was built by Tobias Caesar. Thanks, Tobias. I'll go ahead and call over Danielson and we can kind of take a look at this thing. Well, here we are with this beautiful AMG engine here, Daniel.
Where are the Ferrari symbols? What is this?
Well, it's not a Ferrari, it's a Mercedes.
Yeah.
And it was built by Tobias Caesar.
Nah, no thank you.
No? All right, well, I guess I will get Grimes over here then. Let's try this again.
What do you got here, Wizard?
That's what I'm going to ask you. What is it that we're looking at here?
So this is a GL63 AMG.
Mm-hmm.
That is an M157 bi-turbo V8. Pretty similar to the M278 that they had in the S550s and basically anything that was denoted 550. These are actually a really problematic engine for Mercedes.
I was going to say, this thing's owned by Rob, so let's dish it out. Let's hear it here.
I don't know if he wants to hear. I don't know if he's ready for that.
Oh, I think he's always ready.
So, as you know, I worked on Mercedes for quite a while and saw a ton of these and the 278 derivative. Some of the big issues that we had, they have a bunch of small little plastic coolant lines, and they're all at various places around the block. And also, you've got one way back here, and they're all really prone to failure at fairly early mileage. One of the big expenses on these that's, really normal for them is these front cam covers here. For some reason, when Mercedes built them, they put some sort of coating on those, and they leak. Every single one of them leaks. You have to take the covers off, buff them, and put them back on the new sealant.
Okay.
They're good for a while. The Achilles heel on these was the cam adjusters and the cylinder liners. So what would happen is over time they would score the cylinder walls, and it was normally on number 5 up here, and they'd score the cylinder walls. You'd get low compression, you'd get a misfire. Most of the time we'd see them come in, they'd have a new set of coils, new spark plugs, all of that on them, and they'd still be misfiring. So they'd come to us and we'd diagnose them low compression, bore scope, and yeah, they were pretty much condemned at that point. They had a rash of cylinder head failures.
Oh boy.
Leaky valves, things like that. Unfortunately, haven't seen them really at the mileage required to see failed turbos or anything like that. But the big thing is you have to take care of these things. You have to do all of the maintenance on time, every time, to, kind of stave off these issues.
Right. We've actually had one of these in the shop where we diagnosed it with low compression. I think I sent you pictures of it when you were working at the other place, so we actually condemned that one and it went away. But really the only fix would be a complete new engine, or at least a short block, huh?
Yeah, and we actually had a customer a while back that he purchased an engine from LKQ, had it sent to us. I scoped the cylinders immediately. Number 5 had scoring. I rejected 2 more engines after that.
So 3 were bad.
3 were bad from LKQ, yep.
So maybe Hoovie was onto something when he was trying to tell Rob, please don't do this.
Yeah, definitely don't buy them used.
Don't buy them used. Luckily, it's only needed a few things that were wrong with the brakes and some other issues we're going to take a look at today. Let's go ahead and get this thing on the lift.
All right.
Mrs. Wizard actually found this on Amazon. It's called Mr. Predicto. It's kind of like the Magic 8 Ball, but it actually talks to you. We'll go ahead and turn it on here. We're going to ask it some questions for Rob and kind of predict the future of his ownership on this GL63 AMG. Is this going to be a reliable car for Rob?
Definitely not.
Oh, that's not looking good, Rob. Is it going to severely break down in the next 10,000 miles?
Ask later, when the time is right.
Oh, I guess the timing's not right for that one. All right. Did Rob do good buying this car? Does it actually turned out to be a pretty decent car?
Yes, I am sure.
He's even sure about it. All right, well, we'll put this thing away and we'll go ahead and take a look underneath this thing. All jokes aside, let's take a look underneath this GL63. There's lots of panels up here in front, but a lot of stuff we can still see. We'll start right here. Underneath the radiator, I don't see anything leaking or anything pouring out, which is a really good sign. It did have some seepage going on this tray area here because it had an axle seal that we'll show you here in a minute that was leaking. It's been repaired. The front brakes are good, about 70% remaining. Nothing leaking on the shock. CV boots are good. Nothing loose there. Sway bar link is good. Brakes are good. Nothing loose on the wheel. Sway bar link is good. CV boots are good. And the shock is dry. So everything's looking good there. In this area here, the passenger side inboard of the CV shaft, there was an axle seal that was pouring oil out of it. We refilled the oil that was lost and also put a new seal on and cleaned up the area. So that's kind of what we saw going on right here. But luckily, nothing else was leaking. So we didn't have to go any further than that. We can see the front drive shaft and also the transmission. Nothing leaking there. Nothing loose. As we come back, here's our little transfer case. It's nice and dry as well. Nothing leaking there. There's a joint on the back for the rear drive shaft. Everything looks good there. There's our big resonator chamber. It even says AMG on there. Then we go down the middle here. Here's our fuel tanks, or fuel tank, I should say. And there's a flex disc, which looks like it's actually in pretty good shape. Differential is not leaking anything. Let's go ahead and over to the side here. One of the complaints was that he had the rear end riding lower than the front. It was actually 2 inches low. And I'll show you the old link arms. This little area here of these little white circles with a piece in the middle. It's nice and firm and solid. I mean, if I try to bend it, it won't bend. But I'll show you the other ones here in a minute. Nothing leaking out of there. CV boots are good. Shocks are dry. Sway bar link is good. We have brand new rotors and pads here because they were getting very, very thin. So that was taken care of as well. Nothing loose. Again, a new link arm, or actual link, I should say, for the ride height sensor. Sway bar link is good. Strut is dry. Brakes are brand new. And nothing loose there. This right here is an active sway bar, so as you're cornering and going through a curve really sharply, this can actually counteract the roll of the body. It's not just a piece of steel that's a sway bar, it's actually active, so it actually can counteract it. So you can see some lines going to it here. Pretty cool technology. One thing I really like to see on this one that we just saw the SQ5 that had fake exhaust ports in the back. If you don't know what we're talking about, you should go back and check that video out. The link is in the description. But this one has real exhaust ports, and they sound really, really good. Let's check the date codes on these tires. And we can tell that the tires are actually good because the date code is 21st week of 2022. And if you look up here, you can see in the lug bolts, one of them is shiny and brand new. And I'll tell you the story on that as soon as we get this thing on the ground. So here we have a cart of a lot of the old parts off of Rob's car here, the GL63, and we can see that the rotors were very deeply grooved. You can actually catch your nail on that. And also the pads were almost to the point of rubbing through to the wear sensor. They were very, very thin. So we got those replaced to take care of any issues so that he can drive his car and not worry about that warning light coming on for his rear brakes. One common issue that we see when someone just buys a used Mercedes, Jaguar, Land Rover, BMW, or even
Maserati.
Yes, Mrs. Wizard's Maserati, is that it never fails that the previous owner loses the security socket for the lug bolts. It never fails. You go to a shop and get some work done and they can't find it, and then you're like, I don't know, and you search all over the car, you spend an hour looking for it, it's gone. I don't know why they get lost so much, but the front ones on this vehicle have been drilled out and replaced with regular lug bolts sometime in the past before we've seen it. But the rears were not, and I had to drill and get an easy out to get these ones out. You couldn't go to the dealer and they could have a master set that could get those off, but it probably would cost more than just drilling them out. It's like $40 or something per lug bolt, because you have to spend time drilling it out. Then there's the cost of a brand new lug bolt to replace it, and that adds up to about 40 bucks, something like that. It's not too expensive, it's just kind of a hassle, and I never go back with security socket style lug bolts. Unless you're in a big city where crime is really, really bad, I just never really have come across anywhere where cars are sitting on cinder blocks and wheels are stolen. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. So I always recommend to the customer, get that security junk off, throw it away, and go back with some standard lug bolts. Because now when you go to service your vehicle, they don't have to worry about this. There are some places where you really should have them, and if you do, make sure you get the code or the letter off of the security socket and write it down. Maybe even buy a spare one to keep in your house that matches that code. So if it gets lost, you can say, hey, I have another one. Don't worry, I'll be up there with the socket. But unless you absolutely need them, I don't recommend them. So we'll get these out of the way. Now, when the vehicle came in, it was sitting low in the back, almost 2 inches. It's easy to think, oh, it's a leaking airbag, it's expensive, it's going to be some massive thing. Actually, Grimes already knew. He just took one look at the vehicle and said, it's got the rubber band links on it. I was like, what? We put it up in the air, and sure enough, let me show you what we found here. These are the links that go actually to the ride height sensors, and they should be sturdy, they should be firm, but these are like rubber. Take a look at one of these here. It doesn't take much to bend it out of shape, especially these longer ones. It wouldn't take much to be off by centimeters. Look at this, guys. That is probably not something that should be able to happen.
They look like they're made from Gumby.
Yeah, they're like rubber. I'll clean all this nasty brake stuff off my hands here, but all jokes aside, we like to play jokes with Rob and talk about some of his vehicle purchases. Hoovie was actually here today. He was like, Wizard, you've got to have some fun with this car. And we did. But like I said, all jokes aside, it actually is in pretty good shape. For all the things that could be wrong with this car, a couple $1,000, a few $1,000, and all this stuff is sorted. Is cylinder 5 scored on this engine? We don't know yet. We haven't taken it apart. It's not running bad. There's no reason to spend the time and the labor to look. Unfortunately, it is very common with this particular engine. I hope it never happens to Rob. I don't wish that on him. That's not fun. But we got the main issue solved here. It's riding level like it should be now. The rear brakes are not getting to a dangerous area. The axle seal situation is solved. No more oil pouring out. It really drives really nice. It's a nice vehicle. We do like Mercedes-Benz here, not so much BMWs, even though Mrs. Wizard owns one now.
You bought it for me.
And if you're curious about some of the information about her car, check her link in the description below to go to Mrs. Wizard's Ways. She talks about her car there, the bus, a whole bunch of other things. You definitely want to check out what she's got going on her channel. If you're curious what kind of tools we use here in the shop, like this little plastic hammer.
Don't break his windshield.
No, I probably shouldn't break his windshield. No, not plastic tools, but real tools that we use in the shop. Check the Amazon affiliates link in the description below. We get a small cut and we really appreciate it. And make sure to hit the subscribe button for this channel because there's tons of cars in the shop, which means more videos for you guys. Thanks for watching.